I wanted to first start off by saying thank you, a huge thank you actually to the crowd of people that we had, led by Noel, Chris Klix, and Nan, and the others that went out to Freda to basically close everything up and clean it up and get it shut down. And then Chris and Nan Klix went out there again and actually stopped by Northwest Propellers and transported the propeller for the Cessna 182, a tow plane back out for our reinstallation into 79 Delta, and that is really appreciated. If we didn't have this sort of volunteerism, we would be in a serious world of hurt. And because of that, it actually enables our organization. This has been something of a tough year, and we're going to look at that a little bit in the finances and also within the tows here. The other thing that we'd like to do is basically have a big banquet. We've cut it down to the wire, and unfortunately, it's really difficult trying to find places. We started actually a couple months ago looking around for different venues and trying to see how much interest was out there based on the poll that we did. Initially, we had about 35 people total that were interested in doing the SGC banquet. So it looked like our most promising venue would be McMenamins, located in Bothell at their Anderson site. And so we can get a banquet room. We're basically looking at a lunch type brunch. The deadline is today, but I'm going to see if I can't talk to them tomorrow. The problem is we're still short by about 10 people to launch that. And so I'm asking you, if as the members, if you're interested, the poll is still open for that. And Noel was kind enough to put that inside of the email. But if you can go to that poll, even right now online, and let me know if you're interested or not. The problem is when you book a banquet room, and in this case with McMenamins, they require, if you want a full refund, it's got to be more than 60 days before you cancel. So if we plunk down basically about $1,600 and only a handful of people showed up, that's a very expensive meal. However, if we have basically at least 30 people show up minimum, we sort of break even right around $50. So if you wouldn't mind, go to the poll and either let me know one way or the other. We'll get a final head count on that this evening, and then make a decision from there as to whether we will lock it down with the reservations and move forward. But if we don't have enough participants, we're going to have to find an alternative on that. And the SGC banquet will not happen in a dedicated room in that area. Anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to bring up? Okay. You can give me just a minute to pull up. Wanted to first of all go through and share some of our numbers that we have.
Hey, just Jim, just an admin thing. It looks like the chat function's deactivated right now. Perhaps if you turn that on so people can comment if they need to.
Okay.
I think I set up the meeting. This is Noel. It should be on. So are people saying if they click the chat bubble to open it up, it's not letting them type things in?
It says only available to team members. So I guess because I'm using the web function, maybe it's not active for the web function. I don't know.
Okay. I will see about changing the setting there. Don't know how that got set, but I will try to fix that right quick.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks, James. Appreciate you letting us know. Okay.
All right, please feel free to continue. It's going to take me a minute to correct this.
Okay. Can everybody see my desktop at this point?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is, I need to actually dig around it and find a little bit more. But what you're looking at right now is the spreadsheet that's actually showing what the totals were over the years. And I have another spreadsheet actually that I need to bring up showing what we had for 2020, 2021, and 2022. But what I'd like to.
So question, this is the number of tows? It's unclear. It doesn't say.
Correct.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
all right. So what you're looking at is this column here is the year. Okay. This column is saying this is our Pawnee 7/8 pop. This right here was our Super Cub, which we no longer had after 2010. 7/9 Delta was basically from 2010 to what we have here. 7/9 Delta is our Cessna 182A that we have. And so, in the 2008 timeframe, we were doing pretty well. We did have a low year here in 2011, but what you'll notice is that from about mid 2000s and kind of going on, it's been up and down a little bit. The problem that we bumped into, though, is actually as we get towards the latter part of this. So I'll pull that up here in a minute, and I'd like the members to kind of keep this in mind of where we are on these numbers. Let me see. Okay. So here are the numbers, and now if we look at what happens here at the end of basically we're 2018. We get 2019 was a pretty good year, especially when you compare it to two of the previous years. What happens though in 2020 is COVID. We basically we didn't have any tows that year. I think the only flying we had done out of a freighter were the handful of people that had motor gliders, and I think even some of those flights were few and far between. So in 2021, 7/8 Pop had 141 tows and 7/9 Delta had 59 tows, giving us a total of 200, which is okay, but still somewhat problematic. And I'll get to that in a little bit. In 2022, we did slightly better with 259 tows off 7/8 Pop. 7/9 Delta was down basically for maintenance. Essentially, we have a Prop 80 where we had to get new propeller blades on it. We had a bad jug on it. And the other thing that happened is that we took it offline to save the money on the insurance. But when you start running the numbers for it, for the tow planes, you need to be doing at least 300 tows a year on a tow plane in order for it to actually break even with the costs and the rates that we're currently charging right now. So back early this year, essentially at the start of the season, the board voted to increase the rates based on essentially assuming that we'd make 300 tows a year as a minimum. We were really trying to target 350. And even at that, it came out to right around $265 an hour operational cost for the cost of the plane. And this is a challenging environment because if you remember, at one point, gas prices actually were at $8 a gallon for avgas. And when you're burning 14 gallons an hour, that gets expensive real fast. So for every dollar it goes up, throw $14 additional on top of what your hourly expenses are in terms of how that works out.
Hey, Jim, quick question.
Yes.
That rough break-even point of 300 tows per year, was that per plane or for the current SGC fleet of 2 tow planes?
No, that's per airplane.
So you're really needing 600 total to break even?
Correct.
Okay.
There's a
Yeah.
world in which 500 tows works, but
Right.
It's for those that haven't been on previous conversations on this, forgive me, Jim, for breaking in, but just to level set, since I've given this presentation a few times, what everyone needs to keep in mind is that just to own a tow plane, and I say this having been treasurer of both Evergreen for several years and SGC for several years. It doesn't matter which club you're talking about. It doesn't matter what type of tow plane you're talking about. Just to have a hangar and pay the insurance and perform your annual inspections, and not much more than that, runs you somewhere between $9,000 and $10,000 per year. So that's before you start doing any flying. So one of the tricks, or one of the things that people should think about when we talk about these tow numbers, is that it's a curve, right? If we do one tow in a year, that tow has to be like $10,500 for that one tow in order for us to, break even. If we do 2 tows, well, each one only has to be $5,000, right? If we do 10 tows, they only have to be $1,000, right? So there's a curve, right? And there is a kink in the curve depending on exactly how you want to allocate things like long-term maintenance and other costs that don't occur every year. There's a kink in the curve somewhere in between 200 and 300 tows per tow plane, wherein our typical costs for a tow that people seem to think is reasonable get us to the annual cost of actually running the tow plane, right? And of course, the more you fly it, the more gas you burn. So it's you're kind of chasing the long tail. But that's why we come up with these numbers. And thanks, Jim, for coming bringing up some of these charts with some of the numbers. But again, the core of my message here is that when we talk about 250 to 300 tows per tow plane, that is basically if we can only make a couple of bucks basically off of each tow and use those couple of bucks to pay off the fixed costs of just owning the tow plane every year, then we have to do that number of tows in order to not be losing money every year. And again, that still doesn't necessarily account for all the long-term maintenance on the plane. And it's just an unfortunate reality of the way things are. So hopefully that kind of level sets everybody.
Yeah, the challenge of it is if you've been fortunate enough to have a glider, you look at it and you say, well, okay, you've got your insurance, you've got it in a trailer, you probably don't have to worry about a hangar. Some people do, but most don't. And you do, it looks at it. I mean, if you actually go through and run the numbers on a glider, it doesn't look terribly bad. But as soon as you throw an engine on something, it starts to become kind of stupid expensive. And that, that is one of the main reasons that we do clubs, is to try to share the burden of that cost. And if you also belong to a club that has power planes, and you really start to watch what goes into it, particularly if they do good maintenance, Boeing Employees Flying Association or any of the others, what you realize is that there's a tremendous amount of cost in maintenance. So we ended up actually with a few maintenance items that bit us pretty hard. We ended up actually having to put in a new fuel indicating system into the Pawnee. So that took it down for a month. We also lost a month due to the smoke. And so that when that happens, that means that there's downtime associated with it. So going back to the original part of this is that if you've got fixed costs, and even if you never took off and flew once there, you still have to basically pay for your, you still have to pay for your hangar. You still have to have some sort of insurance on it, even if it's non-movement insurance. But all of these costs, now assuming you're going to fly it, are fixed costs. And so what we did is we analyzed this at the beginning of the year to really understand what we had, because initially we were only charging, I think, about $165 tack time, originally $150 tack time. And we were looking at the numbers and realizing that over the years we've been steadily degrading. So inside of the analysis, what we've done is we've set up for your hourly airframe and engine. And so this means that if you take what it costs for the overhaul of the engine, and you look at the airframe recovery on it, and you assume that the engine and airframe are good for about 2,000 hours, it means that you're close to $50 an hour just what you should be putting away in reserves, so that when that day comes that you need to overhaul the engine and you need to recover the aircraft, that you actually have those monies set aside. Then you have your annual fixed costs that are associated with that. And if you assume that you fly at 100 hours a year, that works out to a little over $100 an hour just for the annual fixed costs. By the way, I went back and I looked at it in between June of 2020 and the end of this year. We only put 107 hours of tack time on the aircraft. So we actually only averaged about 53 hours, not the 100 that we were looking for. I need to go get tack time to go back and do a final year comparison to see how our model was stacking up on this. And then, so in addition to these two items, you have your fuel costs that get thrown into here. And then with those considerations, what happens is that we add all of that together. So we've got our fuel at 112 an hour, 47.50 here, and then basically your annual fixed cost, and that works out to about 261. And again, kind of keep in mind that these numbers are close, but they're not going to be super exact. We won't know until we actually have the final count and we've tallied everything up at the end of the year. So I expect to do that, but we do use these tools to try and understand what we need to be charging in order to even just break even on it for these cases. So that actually works out to about $75 a tow. You say, look, if we're going to say even just at 8%, which is $6, that means that our tows work out to about $81, and that would be for about a 3,000-foot tow, roughly. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah,
I have one, Jim. This is Mike Bamberg.
Yeah, Mike.
This is good information because I just put in the paperwork to get the contest put together. And as you and I discussed at the end of August, the limitations that the current rules put in, we would be losing money to fly anything. But these numbers are important, and I've had a bit of a discussion with a couple of people, and I need these numbers to put out for my proposal to the Rules Committee. So if you wouldn't mind forwarding this to me, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I will gladly do that. And actually, any SGC club member is welcome to these numbers, but I will certainly forward these on to you, Mike.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
hey, Jim, just to add, kind of follow on from Noel's comments there in terms of price sensitivity curves. Just thinking here, I mean, obviously, looks like you can obviously change variables here and get, depending on what you decide fuel costs are and how many tows and so forth. Have you plotted out what the sensitivity curves are, as a function of fuel price, or alternatively as a function of how many tows per year? In other words, what's more sensitive? If fuel goes up $1 a gallon, is that going to be worse than having 100 less tows per year, and so forth? Basically, so you can kind of get an understanding of sensitivities, so you kind of can build in a healthy margin. So we're not nickel and diming it every year and wondering if we can keep a second tow plane, for example.
Yeah, James, I totally agree. And well approached, like the Boeing engineer that I know you are, spoken by a fellow geek Boeing engineer. So I have not plotted out full sensitivity curves, but I have spent some time with the numbers. So for example, you can see immediately what happens in this case if we drop this down to $7 a gallon. You're saying, oh, okay, well, it's $2.50 an hour. It drops us down to, about $70. But where we're headed with the fuel prices and where we've been consistently is, somewhere between 7 and 8. And so even at $7.50, we're still close to $80 a tow on that. If you're doing 3.5 tows an hour. But yeah, I think that's good input there. and we can certainly plot those out.
Just as an example for the year right now, evergreen, at least what's in the tow logs, about roughly 640 tows. And, generally, depending on the year, we're between that and, I don't know, 800 plus tows on a normal year, just as a point of comparison. But I don't know. I mean, we tend to talk a lot about this type of perspective. I don't know, just obviously this is focused on tow costs, but, also talking about what things can we do to increase demand. We've talked about some different trends. People tending to move away perhaps from just the unstructured weekend activity out at a freighter and perhaps more towards the structured events. And perhaps, at a certain point, may need to, potentially even pay somebody to help organize that. I appreciate how much time goes into organizing those type of events. Anyway.
Yeah, so James, actually, thanks for bringing that up. That's a great segue into a discussion that's been going on in the board that we noticed a while back, and Noel has pointed this out, and Brad Pattison has pointed this out. And that has to do with the biggest driver of tows is when we have events, whether it's a contest, it's a dust up, it's an expedition that goes out there. People love to do that, but the days of when we would have basically 24 pilots show up and just fly the weekend, and everyone would log it on OLC, and they would just be out there just to fly the cross country. And that unfortunately we don't have that same population anymore for a number of different reasons, but part of it is we have far fewer cross-country pilots, and we need to do something about that. We need new blood in the sport. We need more gliders out there. We need more cross-country flights happening. And then there's also been the discussion, well, you need to get the tow pilots out there. Well, the glider pilots won't go out if the tow pilots aren't out there. And then you have the tow pilots saying, well, I go out there and, there are no glider pilots out there. Well, Frank Schiavino actually did a really good job trying to inspire people and get people out there. And so I think we actually had pretty good turnout. Many thanks to Frank for doing that. However, I also ran into some a couple of glider pilots when I went out there and I towed. And I got back, and no, it wasn't. Labor Day. I think it was Labor Day in September. It was not the absolute most stellar 3 days of soaring. One day wasn't. It was a 3-day weekend. One day wasn't soarable, but we had a good time out there. Second day was wasn't great. The third day was really good, and there were some great flights. But what happens is people look at the internet and they say, you know what? I know I signed up, but the forecast looks like crap, so I don't think I'm going to bother to go. And what I found fascinating about the contest this year, and what I found fascinating about the contest last year, is more often than not, the forecasts would frequently under predict the day. And Noel has this uncanny habit of looking at it and kind of peeling back the layers and saying, yeah, I think actually it's going to be better than it is. And Mike Bamberger was there as well. And they would actually take the tasks based on the information and their interpretation of it. And by now, they were right almost every single time. Rarely did I see a day that was forecast out there, if you took it at face value, to actually be spot on. It does take, I think, a bit more interpretation. It shows that the forecasts are not yet perfect. They do a good job of showing trends. But more importantly is, if nobody shows up to fly, then they really don't know what is actually happening out there. And if we all start second guessing, well, it doesn't look like 14,000 foot thermals, and we stop going out there, well, there just won't be an operation anymore. So anyways, that's my 2 cents worth. I love towing out there. I think we'll get more tow pilots out there, but I would also encourage our members that if you want to fly, go fly. don't second guess it on what you think the forecast is telling you, unless, I mean, unless it just absolutely looks horribly rotten and it's pretty obvious that it's going to be bad. But if it looks like it's going to be good to maybe marginally good, sign up and let's go fly.
Jim, on that note, would you mind flipping back to show the number of tows over the last few years? There's a point that I want to make sure doesn't get lost when we dive down into the weeds of the per tow costs here, and it goes to a comment that was made about keeping 2 tow planes. I've had discussions with a few folks on this call about this over time, and so I've got some pretty strong opinions as well, which is no surprise to anybody. And the first thing I want to point out is that, you know, a lot of what Jim's talking about, we've been talking about since like 2019 or 2018 or even before. And we really did start to try to make a concerted effort to focus more on events around 2019, and then COVID hit. And then 2021, we expected tow values to be low because we were still dealing with, you know, the pandemic was ebbing and flowing. And then even this year, we're not completely clear of COVID, obviously, but we had hoped things would be back to closer to normal. And between some of the lack of pilot participation, the downtime on the tow plane, and the smoke, we really fell short again this year. And so, unfortunately, that is putting us into a very difficult position with regards to keeping 2 tow planes and what the future of the club looks like. And I don't want to be Mr. Doom and Gloom, but I think all of us who care about the club, this is the time over the next couple of months where we're really going to have to make some hard decisions. And if we want to try to do the maximum amount, like having more events, like trying to figure out some way to keep 2 tow planes, there's going to be some increased participation we're going to need from all of you who took the time to come on the call tonight. I appreciate that. I don't want people who are here to feel like you're getting beat about the head in thanks for coming on the call. But it's just, if you look, I mean, we've got what, 16, 18 people on the call. And if you look at the volunteer participation, we're down to, you know, 10 or 12 people doing a lot of things, and tons of different reasons. COVID is one of them. People aging out of the sport's another. Honestly, I think some of it is that a lot of folks these days are volunteering with the clubs that have the training organizations that are closer to their hometown, and that has sort of bled away some of the participation and volunteerism in SGC. And there's a lot of folks, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions here, but there are a lot of folks who treat the SGC as sort of a semi-commercial operation. And to be fair, as a longtime member of the board, I think we've allowed that to happen. We've allowed people the idea that, hey, I pay $35 and now I'm covered under insurance, and then I pay my fees and I just show up and I fly and I go away, and that's okay. And I think there was a long-term reticence to push back against that, because every little bit of participation was good, and we didn't want to not have people come out. We didn't want to raise the barrier to entry to coming out to Afraid of just one weekend or 1 week a year to be too high. But I think this is one of the unfortunate side effects of that, is that we don't have a strong core, and we have to figure out how we deal with that. And I see Mike Bamberg has a hand up. So before I turn it over to Mike, I will just say these numbers, the reason I brought them up is because if we get a chance to talk to Randy, if he's willing to talk a little bit about our financial situation here after Mike Bamberg, I think that's going to provide some clarification for folks and give you guys an understanding of why guys like Jim and myself are hammering on this so hard tonight, because again, we've got some tough decisions ahead. And with that leading statement, I'll turn it over to Mike.
So just as a starting statement, just wanted to say that the foundation board finally got together with Henry back from Europe, and Phil and I both willing to say hi to each other. Not that we wouldn't anyway, but the point is that during that meeting, we discussed a lot of these elements, particularly since the foundation's charter is improving across country. And in the discussion, and I think some of you have seen the same situation, people come into our base clubs, Evergreen and Willamette Valley and Hood River and Puget Sound, all the different ones, get themselves a certificate, and then rarely move on to something like cross country. And I think one of the reasons I ended up with being asked to be part of this foundation board is because Noel and I and Jim and I have talked about training in cross country, and that's been a substantial effort from me in my particular club and in almost every place that I've gone, is how do I get people to start flying cross country? And so one of the things that I had proposed to both Noel and to Jim, and also we discussed last night in the board meeting, is we would like to be able to make more educational events over at the training center, and whether they be flying events or not, they can be opportunities to come and to get some new skills and or knowledge. I pointed out to Henry, I've been giving these presentations in the Willamette Valley for better part of 25 years, and I have some of them on YouTube that you can go and see whether I'm blowing in the wind or whatever. But the point is that if we take the idea that was just talked about, is how do we get more people to want to come to Ephrata and fly, whether there is a boomer day or just an adequate day, which there's a lot of adequate days that occur out there. So the foundation board is actively trying to figure out how to support that particular effort. I know there's interest in what's happening with regard to securing another two-place training aircraft, but that is currently, it's being discussed, but we haven't come to any clear conclusion yet. There's a number of other elements that we want to ensure are being covered. And I specifically want to thank Rita. Last night, she and I had a long conversation that clarified for me a lot of information that I had been struggling to locate. I also want to thank Chris Klix and Nan for locating a number of documents that actually will help the foundation to move forward, ensuring that we have the correct focus. The one last thing that I'd like to, looks like I'm frozen, there we go. The one last thing I would like to point out, and this touches on the last thing that Noel said, I don't know how it works in other clubs. I know how it works in the Willamette Valley Club and how it works in the Hood River Club, but nobody flies unless they come out and help. Everyone has an assigned ops day. Everyone has an opportunity to come out and help mow the grass. Nobody is exempt from performing volunteer work. And it's never really been a limit to our members coming out and working. So I'm just saying that that's another consideration, is do we need to include some kind of service as part of the inclusion and being able to participate at Ephrata?
Mike, thank you very much. Well said. And for those of you who may have missed the announcement, so Mike Bamberger is actually the newest member to the SGC Soaring Foundation board. Sometimes we just call it the foundation, along with Henry Rebeck and Phil Rose. So we certainly appreciate your service. And one of the main reasons that we also brought Mike on board is because not only the tremendous experience that he has as a professional pilot and thousands of hours of instructing in power and gliders, but he has a real passion for teaching. And I'm excited about having him on the foundation and helping us to provide some vision in a way we're going to be moving forward with that. So thank you, Mike. So what I'm going to do, if I can, let me see.
Were we going to Randy next?
Well, so I spoke with Randy, and he and I had an agreement that I would go ahead and just share the numbers and go ahead and he's going to be standing by. But first of all, a huge thanks to Randy for helping us actually get our to help straighten our get us started on the right track and actually doing a month-by-month expense sheet that we have, and we should have done this a while back. So Randy's done an excellent job of going through. We still have some more work that we have to do in terms of previous years and actually doing some reconciliation, because essentially what happened is we had a bit of a slip up in the years past and had not filed all the appropriate paperwork, and now we're having to go back to the IRS and get our paperwork in order, as well as our filings, and essentially reestablish ourselves. And so we've had help from Randy on that, as well as we've had input also from Craig and Rita, and then also from Craig's wife, who actually is an attorney for nonprofits, and she specializes in that area, and then also an accounting firm. So it's big steps in the right direction. Actually, this is, oh, you know what? I do not have the latest one. Hey, Randy, I apologize. Can I put you on the spot and have you bring up the latest sheet that we have?
Sure.
Thank you.
So my screen is what we want to get to, right?
Yes, please. So if you look at the small rectangle.
Let me
with
get
the
it
arrow.
up here first.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. I thought I had the correct file up. And
All right. Is it this one? Can you see that?
Looks great.
yes, we can. Great, thank you.
Okay, so this is the latest sheet. This is not one that has been presented to the board yet. And the way this is laid out is this is a month-by-month tally of income up at the top and expenses at the bottom. And then below the first blue line is our BECU checking balance on a month-to-month basis. We also have a Fidelity account and our month-to-month movement of that, which that's pretty stable. And then below the green line is the total cash assets of the club. And so as you can see, our financial position is eroding and quite rapidly over the last 3 years. And in fact, let me bring up something else here. Hang on a second. Let's see. Here it is. So this was something I prepared for the board when I first came on board in August. And you can see
Randy, I'm sorry. I think when you hit share, you only shared the Excel spreadsheet. So if you're showing us something else, we can't see it now.
Oh,
so you might have to go back. Yeah, you might have to go back and hit that share button.
Okay.
And I suggest choose to share screen rather than just share a window.
Okay. How do I choose share screen? It says open share tray.
Okay. And then you should have options for
Full
screen and window. There you go.
Okay. So you can see my screen now, right?
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Okay.
Maybe try again.
Let's try this one.
Got it.
Got it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Great.
Okay. As I've told the board, I retired before all of this good this online meeting stuff started happening, and so I'm not all that familiar with it. I'm getting it, but it's been like pulling teeth. This is about the only time I do this. So what you can see is the year-ending cash balances of the SGC starting from 2009 to 2021 over on the left-hand side of the sheet. And then in the middle of the sheet, you can see the income and expenses and the net each year of that set of years. And the big problem is obviously down here towards the bottom. 2019, you actually did pretty good. You made $22,000 that year. The club did. 2020, the club lost $10,000, $10,829, and 2021 is where we've taken the big hit. We've gone from, kind of floating anywhere between $65,000 and $80,000 in the bank over a fairly long period of time. And then we lost $32,000 in 2021. And we're on track right now to lose about close to $9,000 this year. So we don't have the current cash balance is right around 25,000, and that includes the Fidelity account. So we got to start thinking about how to infuse some cash into the operation.
Hey, Randy, does this include a holdout for engine reserves?
Well, there really isn't a holdout for engine reserves. It's an on paper thing that is on the balance sheet.
To give a little historical perspective on that, originally the Fidelity account, when it was set up, was intended to be the towplane engine reserve. But then back around the time I joined the SGC, this is before I was treasurer, so this is a little bit hearsay. My understanding is when the economic downturn hit, and for many, many years, of course, interest rates were near zero, and the Fidelity account was earning nothing because it was mostly savings and very safe investments that could not entail a risk of loss in order to be a good steward of our money. That Fidelity account wasn't making anything, and so additional contributions to it were deferred. And then we get into the years, sort of 2012 to 2017, which overlaps with some of the time I was treasurer. And the 2016 $10,000 net is a little bit misleading because of events that year, but essentially we were kind of just treading water, right? We're gaining a little, we're losing a little, we're gaining a little, we're losing a little. And so there was no impetus to restart trying to dump a bunch of money into the towplane reserves. So fast forward today, and the situation, as Randy has said, it is we've got 17,000 or so, I think, Randy, in that account.
Correct.
Yeah. And it is not, and this will become clear in just a minute while I'm saying this, it is not something we typically use to pay bills with or do any operations, right? The Fidelity account is sort of a rainy day fund that we have not tapped to date. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Quick question. How many active members do we have in the SGC?
Well, we have a total of 132 members that show up as being members, full-fledged members for 2022. However, the total number of those that are actually active is a different matter because we only had 259 tows on 7/8 off. Now we potentially maybe had some other tows behind other tow planes. Some of the SG one out at Methow and some of the other stuff. But this kind of goes back to an earlier part of the conversation, and that is, remember where we set the tow fees is the idea that you break even somewhere on 300 tows. So if you look at what happened in 2020, and we are we we only lost basically 11,000 because of the I'll call it benefactors of our membership, because people paid to be members to help keep us afloat, and yet they didn't get any flying out of it.
And we canceled
myself,
insurance to save money and some other stuff we did to really, buckle down that year.
right. But 2020 and 2021 kicked us in the teeth pretty hard, and we are trying to figure out how do we recover from that.
Just a simple suggestion. I'm assuming that probably a good number of us got COVID economic relief payments from the government over the last couple of years. Given that the clubs similarly faced hardships with lack of revenue over the last couple of years, why not just ask the club membership, for $100? I mean, if 100 people at $100 is $10,000 right there to offset your loss for this year. Just to keep it simple, I'd be more than happy to spend, chip in some money just to offset the anticipated loss for this year, for example.
James, thank you for that suggestion. We will certainly bring it up at the next board meeting.
Doesn't address the systemic issues that we're talking about, but to help with the immediate cash shortfall, it would be, you could obviously adjust the numbers as you see fit, but just as a simple suggestion.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. No,
James, thank you for bringing up the term cash shortfall, because this is the thing that I want to hammer home. This is my sort of, I don't want to call it an axe, but this is my sort of, I don't know, red alert, clarion call, whatever you want to term it. Randy has just explained we're low on cash. He talked about, okay, we've got 17,000 in the Fidelity account, which we normally don't touch. And we've got 10,000-ish in our checking account. Okay. Typically
seven.
Okay. So we've got $7,000 in our checking account at this very moment. And I know chat isn't working for everybody. I'm sorry, I tried to fix it, but it looks like it's a Microsoft problem at the moment. But I'm going to paste into chat a screenshot that I took. And this is the historical costs that we incur each year between November and March. So this is basically sort of like our winter time, dormant time expenses. And this is important because this is a time where we're not getting income from tows. People haven't really started to pay en masse for their membership renewals. And yet we have hangar rents coming due. We have end of year tax filings. We have annual inspections starting up in the early part of the year with planes. And we have insurance bills that come due early in the year. And for those of you that can see the chat window, it basically works out to, we have an average cash outlay of about $16,000 to $16,500 in this 4-month span every year. We have $7,000 in the bank in our checking account. So this is where I think we as a club, and I say as a club because pretty much everybody on this call is a member, so you guys are all in this with us. We have to think about how do we make up for this, and ideas like James Cooper's I think are awesome. Thank you. I'm open to all suggestions, but we also have some thoughts about, or we have to come up with some thoughts and make some decisions about, do we pull money out of the Fidelity account to cover some of this, because we did have some unusual tow plane expenses this year, and does that justify pulling out of the quote unquote tow plane reserve, or do we need to keep that in there because we've decided that it's only for overhauls or whatever, right? This is a decision we need to make as a club. I don't want to put my thumb on the scale too hard on any one direction there. This is fortunately separate from the finances of the SGC Soaring Foundation. And we have to be careful about, IRS laws and the difference between their 501c3 and our 501c7. But, there's a question of, is there some of the financial burden that we could say SGCSF takes on as part of furthering the training and safety mission that they have? Or do they provide some kind of bridge loan? Can we make that work, right? There's lots of different angles to analyze here, but in all circumstances, unless we can do some kind of like mass early membership drive and get a bunch of money early, we are looking at potentially, you know, running our checking account dry sometime in the winter. And so we really need to think carefully about that.
Can I say something, Noel?
Go for it.
This is Mike Bamberg. So during the foundation director meeting, we talked about the potential of extending a bridge loan to the SGC. And we had it as a potential topic, but it would mean that we would have to work out whatever payback system there is for the foundation. So I'm just saying that's been considered by the foundation board as well as something that you guys are talking about.
And that is very much appreciated, Mike. So a loan is okay, provided you can pay it back. But what I'm concerned about here is that even if we can get to 300 tows or 350 tows a year, we have 2 tow planes, and financially, the numbers all say you got to be doing at least 600 tows to support 2 tow planes. It works for Evergreen because they fly year round. But if you look at the way that the SGC operates, on a good year, we'll operate for 4 months, but really our bread and butter is in about 3 months of flying that we do every year. And so I think that we need to ask ourselves a really hard question, and that is, if we are to remain afloat, can we afford a second tow plane?
Okay, and then this is Mike again, and now I'm going to talk as an event manager. Whether or not we hold any of these events this coming year depends very strongly, in my opinion, as the manager, on bringing, having tow planes at the facility that don't cost us as much as they did this year. The fact is that it was worse than pulling teeth to be able to get enough tow planes to manage the 25 or the 20 contestants that needed a tow. And if we have a larger contest or a larger event, and now the dust up's not as demanding because we can take off whenever we want, and someone, if they don't get in line fast enough, they're going to have to wait. But when it comes to a contest, we usually have a window that we want to get all of the contestants off, so they have an opportunity to use the day most efficiently and effectively. And again, one of the things that created the most heartache for me was tow planes. So getting rid of one is only acceptable if we have an alternate way to make sure we have access to more tow planes, because the challenge we had was the same challenge. I talked to several different clubs, and every single club that had more than one tow plane basically said the same thing. We use our tow planes every flying day, and we want to have our second tow plane available at any moment if the primary tow plane has to be going into maintenance or it's time for it to do something. So we're not going to let go of a tow plane. Now that's, whether that's good or bad or whatever it is really immaterial. That's what it was.
Right. But Mike, I think what we're talking about is we're not even hitting the bare minimum we need for one tow plane right now.
I understand.
We have 2 tow planes. It doesn't make sense financially to continue to try hanging on to 2 tow planes when we're about to land out financially.
Yeah. Chris,
I think Chris has got a question, or a comment he wants to make.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I've been listening to all this discussion, and I've had some ideas in the past that I've shared with Noel. There's lots of reasons why we're not making money and are staying afloat. It's because everything has changed over time. We've got a lot more information is available to everybody as far as weather, and now they tend to just want to pick the best days that come out, where it used to be it just came out, and because you didn't have all that information, and so everybody just came out every weekend. It's different now. There's a lot more traffic to get across, fuel expense, everything. What we need to do is look at new way to operate the organization to keep it afloat, not try to continue to operate the way we have been. Yeah, we've got a few events that help, but I think that is a tremendous facility that we have out there with a lot of potential. It's probably one of the nicest or best facilities for soaring in the country. What we need to do is get it in tip-top shape and start selling it nationwide for events and let other people come and use it. That way we can keep it busy. If it's busy, we can then use it ourselves more, and it's going to stay afloat, and it's going to pay for 2 tow planes. We just need to look at it differently and make it work. That's pretty much what I had to say.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for your input. And I think that the Noel and the board and myself all agree. We are all very passionate about trying to do what we can to make SGC as strong as possible. But right now, we've just had the crap kicked out of us financially over the past couple of years, and we're financially at a low spot. We got to climb out of this hole. And so one of the things that we have to look at is not just what's happened the past 2 years, but what's been happening over the basically over the past 15 years. Where's it been going? Why is it tending the way it is? And you're right, there are a lot of reasons, and things are changing. We have to adapt to it. But part of that is also looking at it and saying, okay, if we cannot sometime in the next 6 months figure out a way to financially right ourselves on this, then we need to come up. We're not going to be in business, basically. One of the options is to go back and look at it and say, okay, what can we financially afford to do and still maintain a flying club? Well, one of them is a tow plane.
I think we need to rethink the whole thing and come up with a really exciting plan for the future that people are going to be excited about. And if they're excited about making this a first-rate operation, you're going to get people donating money, or at least it'll be easier to get people to donate money.
Okay, well, I think that's great. And I would encourage you, so we have nominations coming up for the board for next year. And I would strongly encourage you to join up with the board and be a part of that, because that's what we need. If you have a vision for it and you have something that, a plan that you think you can pull in there and make it work, let's do it.
Yeah, I would like to help out on the board this year.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Yeah, somebody else had their hand up.
Quick draft him before he can run away. No, I appreciate it, Chris.
So the only other thing, looking at, no pun intended, but looking at 6 months is short-sighted. I think what Chris is saying is we have we obviously are having a challenge right now, and we know why we're having the challenge, and we understand what's going on. So our old business model doesn't work. So
Exactly.
the question is, let's not start paring things away until we're sure we're not going to need them. Let's do something, and if it's going out like Henry or James said, and saying to the members, look, we think we want to carry this forward, but we need your help on the short term, so we don't, for example, get rid of a tow plane, which all of a sudden we need, because getting one back is hard. I know, I did it for the Willamette Club. It took me months and months.
Yeah, I totally agree. we need to reinvent ourselves. And
Yeah, I mean, just
No.
in addition to, once-off cash infusion, I mean, a $40 annual membership fee, I mean, why is it $40? It can easily be, $150 or something. I think most of them wouldn't probably blink at that. It's a matter of, again, having sufficient buffer to ride out some of these, inevitable year-to-year bumps. And $40 doesn't cover, very much with 100 people, right? So it covers the postage. Things like that, and again, that's obviously near term, whether it's a cash infusion or a membership fee change. There's some fairly low hanging fruit, and obviously bigger picture, what in line with what Chris is saying is, the markets and the demand's shifted, and the organization just needs to, recalibrate to meet that. And like Chris says, we've got a fantastic facility. Let's not, go down the hole too far. We just need to pivot and market ourselves in a slightly different way.
So I'm gonna now, since we're having some ideas thrown around the table, and I think that's great, and I totally hope more people can do that. First of all, since we only have so many people on this call and it's dwindled a little bit since we started, I want to encourage all of you to try to make this an active point of conversation with other glider pilots, right? Because there are plenty of people who are not on this call who have a dog in this hunt, right? People at the local clubs around the whole Pacific Northwest who join up, even if it's only to fly with us for 1 or 2 events a year. They have a stake in this, and we need to get the word out, and we need their participation as well in this, even if it's just to throw around ideas and to tell us they're okay with a $100 charge. But I'm gonna also just lob a big idea out there, and I'm gonna give credit to Mike Bamberg on this one, which is to think, about reinventing ourselves. One of the things that he's brought up is, hey, do we need to think about not trying to be our own completely independent club, and instead be a shared resource amongst a bunch of different clubs, so that those clubs and those clubs members feel a sense of ownership or feel like they have more stake in Ephrata's operations? Because right now a lot of them don't, except for when they show up for their club's encampment once a year, or because they come to one event a year. That moving to that model would be a massive shift for us, and it would be something that would only work if the clubs, the boards of these other clubs, bought into that idea. But I'm just taking, like I said, a great idea from Mike Bamberg and throwing it out there because I think it's worth it for us to put these ideas on the table, to debate them, and to see if we can make forward progress on these things and build any kind of momentum around them.
No, that's exactly what I'm thinking. You're right on the mark. We need to get this facility available to other clubs all around even nationwide. We've got one club that comes all the way from New York every year. So why not more of them?
Yeah, Chris, I think that's a great idea. And we should probably be trying to pull even more, even like Deer Park and some of this other stuff that's closer. And I think there's a big club also down in Driggs, if I'm not mistaken.
It's remarkable that we're not even sure, even for the people on this call, we're all not even sure necessarily who all the clubs are. There is a remarkable lack of sense of belonging and ownership of all the constituent clubs of the Seattle Glider Council. There's a big disconnect there. And I strongly agree with this idea that we all need to hang together, all of us in the Pacific Northwest, or even beyond. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but most of us just have some personal friendships here with some other clubs. There's no real coordinating, right? The numbers you're coming up with the tow plane are not unusual. They look like Willamette's numbers. They look like analysis I did. I suspect if Evergreen's done an analysis or PSSA's done analysis, they're not going to look not that different as well. We all are facing common problems, and the boards, as far as I know, don't talk to each other at all. There's no, in other words, the SGC operates too much like an independent club, the luxury of a second layer club, and not enough as a coordinating organization to bring us all together. There's a lot of us in the Pacific Northwest, but we're all we're relatively isolated from each other, except for things like, TWISP or the Dust Up.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think part of it is because we've been able to operate in a business model where we didn't have to work at it very hard. It was just a given that you ended up with dozens of people that would show up every weekend to go cross country soaring, and that's no longer the case. So yeah, I think there's a lot of excellent input in there. And I would also like to encourage those of you that have got these ideas. As Noel was saying, go talk to your friends, go talk to the other glider pilots. Don't let it drop here, but also consider running for the board and being a part of the recovery on this and figuring a way out of this, because I think we've got a lot of really sharp people, just even on this call alone, that bring together a wealth of experience from a lot of different walks of life that could make this a huge success and turn this around relatively quickly. It's not going to be overnight, but it is certainly encouraging hearing from all of you. Thank you. Well, that's about all I've got. The only other thing I'd like to go back and say, if you haven't signed up for the SGC banquet, please go in, click on it, put in your vote, and I'll do a final tally here in a little bit after the meeting. And if we've got enough people, we'll book the SGC banquet for December 10th for the lunch brunch sort of thing. And if we don't, well, we're going to have to figure out something else. And
Hey, Jim, we've got, as usual, most of the people aren't on the call. Why not just send out a last call, email to the SGC distribution list, so you might get a better response than just this group here on the call.
Yeah, we've done that, and anyways, but yeah, we could do, we can certainly send that out. So looks like, Brad, do you have your hand up? Did you have anything else?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. One, echoing what Alex said, at PSSA, you could basically substitute everything we've discussed here with our club. Finances, participation of a few to the benefit of many. Oops, somebody scratched there. And then the other thing I just wanted to ask Mike Bamberg, do you have dates for the contest in June or whatever? Because I would like to send something out for the Met-Out dates when I can, but I need to know what you guys are looking at for dates for the contest.
I'm not seeing Mike Bamberg on the list of participants. I think he might have had to drop off the call for some reason. If you give me just a minute, I can actually look it up, because he and I have had discussions on this. We're kind of tag teaming this. He's definitely in the lead next year, and I appreciate it. But
yeah, that'd be great. No, that'd be perfect. Yeah, because I like to let people know as soon as possible, because not a lot, but there are several participants who arranged or who have asked to arrange their vacations.
Yeah, so it looks like he's filed for practice day on June 25th, and the contest running June 26th through July 1st.
Okay, then I think we'll do Met-Al the week before that. Would that sound, anybody think that wouldn't be a good idea? So the 25th, I'm guessing that must be Sunday. Is that right?
Typically, yeah, we do the official practice day on a Sunday, and then the first contest day on a Monday. Okay, so maybe we do our last flying day on Saturday. That way people can put their gliders together and not have to, or in the trailers, they wouldn't have to fight traffic going across I-90 on Sunday. They could go Sunday morning if they wanted, sort of thing.
it's really nice to finish it on Saturday.
That's guaranteed to ensure that Sunday's a boomer day. You could do your 1,000K.
Well, they could take tows out of on Sunday, so
Sure.
they can come down and start their 1,000K from a freighter.
Okay, well, I'll send something out, just kind of tentative, save the date for the Meadow thing.
All right, sounds good.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I want to say, send out a big thank you to Randy Scott, our treasurer, who's been doing an excellent job in stepping us through the numbers. We have a lot of work to do in terms of that, and going back through previous stuff. There's an audit that is going to be underway for actually the past 3 years. But again, thank you to all of you for calling in, and unless there's anything else, I think we're going to sign off here.
I'm just going to put in one last plug for a hope to see you all at the banquet. When we did one at McMenamin's last year, I believe it was real nice to get to see everybody and to chat and to sort of reacquaint each other and talk about the year. So I know we've kind of not been talking about the most fun thing tonight, but the banquet will be opportunity to reminisce about some of our awesome flights this year and talk about our goals for next year and any cool new gliders or equipment we've got coming. So I do hope to see you folks there. And Chris, did I see you put your hand up?
Yeah, I see that you're recording, and I was just wondering, are you going to put on the website, or is that recording going to be available to view later? Or?
Yeah, I typically put these up about 24 to 48 hours after a general membership meeting, and I put them onto the SGC Soaring Foundation YouTube channel, because that's basically the best way we have to make it freely available to members, without having to like log in anywhere or anything like that. So I will send out an email once that is live on YouTube and let folks know they can find it there.
Okay, great, thanks.
Do we
Hey,
want
Brad.
all these statements like IRS reclassification to be public on a YouTube channel?
So you're right. Typically, we don't go into this much financial detail. What I typically do for things like this is I make them unlisted on YouTube so that unless you have the exact URL, you can't find it or search for it and see it.
Hey guys, thanks for this, Brad. Yeah, boy, a lot of great ideas. And one thing that I was kind of thinking of, and Chris kind of touched on this, is maybe we should really encourage each club to have a formal representative with SGC, maybe even a board position, like one from PSSA, one from Evergreen, and they'd be sort of the liaison, because more and more it seems like we're going to need to share resources in terms of tow planes, and then getting these clubs to use the clubhouse. Maybe that would help. The club by Spokane and some of these other groups.
Great idea. I think that any communication like that, or it would really help our communication with clubs.
Well, and we're trying to wrap things up, so I don't want to spawn a whole huge more conversation, but I will say that I think what you're talking about there, Brad, about having representatives from clubs kind of falls into this category of things that Mike Bamberg talked about to me about potentially viewing SGC as more of a club of clubs rather than its own freestanding organization. And the question is whether
an umbrella resource for everybody.
Yeah, and it is in a de facto sort of way, but in the way that it's being operated from a financial and board standpoint has been as its own freestanding entity, right? And so the question is for the other clubs, with their 1 or 2 events a year, encampments at a freighter, do they feel enough impetus from their members to take on being part of making SGC work going forward, right? And that's a big question we're not going to get the answer to tonight, but it's a question I encourage all of you who are members of other clubs to take back to your membership, to your boards, and to start socializing that, because these are the kinds of conversations we're going to need to have over the course of the winter in order to find a path forward, even assuming we get a short-term financial solution in place. That long-term is really going to require these kinds of explorations.
It may require the board of SGC to talk to these clubs and say, we would like a representative from your club, you know, and I think you'll get results.
Well, it's good timing because, you know, Evergreen Soaring has its annual general meeting this Saturday. So perhaps in the open discussion forum, we can bring up some of these topics that we've talked about tonight.
That'd be awesome. Thank you, James.
Willamette might be able to do the same. Ours is in 10 days, so 2 weeks.
Sounds good.